You're listening to Chicago Stories, a podcast from City Hall featuring the stories of everyday Chicagoans, as told to Mayor Emanuel.
This is Mayor Emanuel on Chicago Stories. We are joined today by Benny Lee, who runs and is the CEO of the National Alliance for the Empowerment of the Formerly Incarcerated, as a former gang member of the Vice Lords.
Yeah.
Do I have that right?
Yeah.
Okay. And who has been a not only a national but international speaker and sought after for how to change people's lives around. So you used to be a Vice Lord.
Right.
To give people kind of an insight into both getting in and getting out of a gang, which both of those got to be hard. If you could, walk at that moment what made you join, and then what made you just decide to chart a different course.
Well, during the time I became a Vice Lord was like in the mid-'60s. The older Vice Lords, the Vice Lord started in 1957 inside of IYC St. Charles, a juvenile facility.
Started in a correctional facility.
Right. And they came out in 1958, and then years later, like in 66, going into 67, that's when they became the first street gang to get incorporated as a non-for-profit organization, opened up a lot of businesses down 16th Street in Lawndale. And I was maybe 14 years old at the time, and my family had moved out of the K-Town area, like 4300 West on Van Buren, they're killed there. We had moved from that area in the Austin community on Cicero and Jackson. And we were like one out of 3 black families on that block then. And so we ran into a lot of racial tension. We went to May Elementary School right at Laverne and Congress. And we used to have to fight to get through the community, go swimming at Columbus Park and go to the state with the bird show on Madison. So we were like a group of young guys, mainly 6th, 7th, and 8th graders, banding together really to protect ourselves. But there were some older Vice Lords in the area, and they noticed us. Right? And one day they surrounded us and said, if y'all gonna be around here, y'all got to be Vice Lords. We didn't even consider ourselves a gang. We were just young guys in the hood surviving. And so one of the guys came up with the idea and said, well, Geronimo was an Apache warrior. He fought the whites, we fighting these white boys, why don't we become Apache Vice Lord? So that's a good idea. So we became the Apache Vice Lord. So I got recorded as the youngest Vice Lord Chief of the Vice Lord Nation back in 1967.
Where are your parents at the time? That one thing when you're running with 3 guys on the block, and another thing when you're running with a bunch of Vice Lords, which is a different thing. Where are Mom and Dad, if I may ask?
What happened in the early days of my life, my father worked from 8 to 4. So I knew a certain thing I just couldn't do in the neighborhood because he might turn that corner. I had to be at home to do some things. But when his shift changed, he was working at a national casting company right at 14th and Laramie. When his shift changed to 4 to 12. So I was able to elude my mother, come out the basement, window, and all those things, and be out in the streets while she was tending to my younger sisters and all those things. And that's how I got pulled into what was happening in the community. That was like a big shift for me.
So the Vice Lords are out on the street. You were just trying to survive. You joined with a bunch of friends just like anybody else. But that's where you incrementally, your parents or your dad's work schedule changes.
Right.
Vice Lords become something more important in your life. I don't want to summarize or put words in your mouth. But then how did you decide after you're in prison, as I read it right?
Right.
At what point in prison did you decide, I'm done with this, this is not what I want to do, and how did that work?
Well, I was in Stateville maximum security prison in 1982 going into 83.
What were you in there for, if I may ask?
I had a home invasion, armed robbery, a little brief shootout with the police, some hostages, the whole shebang, made the newspaper, strung out on heroin, following my heroin addiction, and that's what led me to those desperate means, right?
Okay.
And so I ended up in prison at 19. I got caught up in the riot in Pontiac in 78. I just got there. The riot was brewing before I even got there. Matter of fact, Governor Thompson even said it, that he expected that riot a year ago. And then we all got scapegoated. So they grabbed every gang leader that was in Pontiac at the time and indicted us for the murders, but we got acquitted. So I came from under that in 81. And I went back to Stateville maybe 4 months later because I wasn't really ready for the streets. I was 27 and I was ill prepared for the streets. So when I ended up in Stateville at 27, did 3 years, and there was a lot of young guys coming down, 18, 19 years old, and these guys like was from my neighborhood, and these were the sons of girls I went to grammar school with. And they would call home and tell their mothers they met me, and their mothers would call me to the phone, ask me to look out for their babies. So I started feeling a sense of responsibility to my community while I was in prison. So I put a mandate out that every young vice lord, if you didn't have a GED or a high school diploma, you need to get in school. If you have one,
you're saying this in prison?
Inside the prison. And I said, if you had a GED or a high school diploma, take up a trade, right? Myself, I was about to get my barber's license in prison, but they cut it and say convicted felons couldn't become licensed barbers, so that cut that. And so what we found is that when we was trying to get these guys in school, there was only 80 slots for people to go to school in Stateville, and there was over 2,000 inmates. So we protested, you know. I said, well, don't no vice lord sweep a floor, mop a gallery, work in the kitchen. We're going to withdraw our labor, right? And so the other gang members like Lord Gino, who ran the Latin Kings, and Larry, who said, well, we're not going to do it. So now the administration want to talk. I explained to them, I said, look, the same conditions that we face within the communities we come from, we face with these same conditions down here. You got 110 jobs in this prison, and there's over 2,000 inmates. That's a high unemployment rate here in prison. There's not enough slots.
I didn't know the Bureau of Labor Statistics operated inside prison. That is, so you basically, you just said that we don't have enough jobs, we have unemployment.
Yeah, because you can get a job in prison and get paid. And, you know, being a gang leader, I need to know how many guys I got working in the kitchen, in the administration, in the commissary, you know, in the wellness.
Well, how did you become the leader? Just oldest, or you showed the leadership?
No, you get chosen by personality. You know,
so leadership.
I was a young guy working my way up in the ranks, and when I had Stateville, you know, don't know one person run the joint. There's a committee. Because, you know, the vice lord got different branches, you know, conservative vice lord, traveling vice lord. And so a representative from each one of those branches make up this committee. Then the committee decide who would be the chairman of that committee, and that's who got the last word. And I was the youngest one appointed to that position at the time. So I used my influence to, like, hey, we need to, because vice lords got an oath that we take. You know, I've been in the as a representative of the Almighty Conservative Vice Lord of the Nation, solemnly swear to never dishonor my most sacred weapon, meaning Lord unity, knowing the threat of death would I deny my brother. I would serve my time constructively so that upon my release, I'd be a more productive member of my community. That's the oath we took. I was pushing that oath. But a lot of older guys still want to exploit these young guys, give them shanks, set them on mission, because you can catch cases while you're in prison. So my thing is like to my peers, look, we done spent all our 20s behind this wall. I don't want to see this happen to this generation. So I ran into a lot of opposition with them.
Do you think you would have all this sense of, obviously not just leadership, but this sense of responsibility to another generation? Do you think you would have that if you didn't have your dad in your life?
Yeah, my father, he pushed that. That was so disappointing to him that me and my older brother ended up in prison. My younger brother didn't, and my three siblings, younger sisters didn't. And his whole thing was always wanted to be a business with his sons. And
he wanted to be in a business with his sons?
With his sons, and we let him down. And that was my whole thing in prison, that I wanted to get out to do something to make my parents proud of me, because I hadn't. Right. That was a nightmare, that my mother would pass while I was in prison, and I haven't did nothing but graduate out the 8th grade to make her proud of me in 1968, right? And so that's pushed me, but I always been like family, you know, come home, eat dinner with the family. You know, my father was about family, because, you know, I'm the middle boy. I got a brother.
So am I.
I got a brother a year older and one a year younger, and they stayed into it, and I was always the mediator. And my father would, you know, when we come together, one of us disrespect each other, he would say, hey, you don't talk to him like that, and you need to speak up for yourself, and you need to apologize. So I would take that to the streets, too. You know, like when grown women come by and guys be using profanity. I said, hold up, man, sneeze, man. Don't you see that grown woman? Excuse me, miss. You know, and the guy was like, what? Because, see, I had a father. These guys had a probably alcoholic stepfather, didn't have a lot of values, but I had that. Even in prison, I had a certain value. And people always say, you don't belong with this crowd, you know. But my thing was...
in prison, they would say you don't belong in the Vice Lord?
I didn't belong. Because I had I was like little Simba with the Lion King, right? He strayed away from the teachers of Mufasa, met Timon and Pumbaa, and they taught him Hakuna Matata. He lost his culture and inherited this culture, and that's what happened to me. But I always had that sense of respect for people, and I never had really no oppositions. You know, even at Stateville at that time, running to attention with my peers, I told them, you know, I'm through with this. I ain't with this no more. And so my crew thought I was saying we were detaching. I said, no, I'm detaching from everything. So I was like not plugged, not affiliated for 3 months in Stateville. And guys was mumbling, you know, plotting. But then other gang leaders would even say, hey, man, I got your back. I said, no, I got to walk this alone.
What does that mean?
It means I'm no longer a Vice Lord. I don't have no juice. I can't call no shots. So now guys can take pot shots at me and all this because I ain't got that authority no more, that influence, right? So I had to walk it.
Were you ever worried about your safety?
No, because I never been unfair to it. Especially them young guys love me. You had young GDs love me. Stones love me.
GDs for everybody else's gangster disciples, right?
So I know how to build relationships and allies, right? That's been, because I was a...
Benny, let me ask you a question, though. You know, some people make this epiphany. I don't know if it's one moment. I do want to ask how it happened, or was it an evolution that you came to a conclusion? But you make a decision in prison before you're even out, I'm out of this game. This is not the way I'm going to lead my life.
Right.
What was that moment, or what were the moments, what was the journey where you said, I'm going to walk this path myself? Was it a single moment? Was there an event? Or was it kind of an evolution of thinking that you said, I'm going to put this behind me and I'm going a different pathway here?
After that stunt about they need to expand the school and all
the jobs,
that,
yeah.
They ended up putting me in segregation, and I could potentially have cited a riot because I had a history.
Is that solitary confinement segregation? Okay.
Yeah, because I had a history of being part of the Pontiac riot, and then I've been in a riot in the county jail, so I got a history of being in riots. So they put me in seg, so I could have potentially cited a riot. And when they put me in the cell, the guy before me left Malcolm X's autobiography on the bunk.
So this is a happenstance.
Yeah. I heard of Malcolm X, but I didn't know nothing about it. I just took the book and threw it in a corner. After being in that cell maybe 3 months, I turned right to the page on that book when Malcolm X was frustrated because he couldn't comprehend what he was reading. He picked up a dictionary and studied from A to Z. So I hollered down the gallery and said, who got a dictionary? And I studied the dictionary from A to Z. Then I started reading other material, you know, dealing with our culture. So I made a transformation inside that cell. So when I came out the cell, that's when I told them, hey man, I can't honor something I don't believe in anymore. I ain't with this no more. So I got I started seeing myself as a different man.
In solitary confinement.
In solitary confinement.
Malcolm X in the dictionary is what changes you.
Yeah. And when I left prison, it's like Malcolm left prison. He vowed he gonna fight for his people. I left prison and said, look, I'm gonna try to do something for this generation come behind me. I can see an aim of purpose in my life.
Was there ever a moment, you're back on the streets, you have a record, were there any temptation moments where you almost fell back on being a vice lord or
street hustler?
I was gonna say gangbanger, but yeah, street hustler is another.
Yeah.
Did you ever almost, because employment's got to be tough.
Right.
It's not like in '83 there's a big search for a former vice lord in the economy or people you're looking for work. So what did you ever get tempted to come back?
Yeah, I went through long-term residential treatment, Gateway. I was mandated through TAS, went through Gateway.
Is this for heroin use?
Yeah, and when I got to the phase where they say you need to go find a job, save your money, move into your apartment and move out of here. And they told me I had to put a resume together. I had never heard of a resume because I never worked. At 32, I had never worked, never had a Social Security card, never had a driver's license. That stuff didn't mean nothing to me. Hustlers don't pay taxes. I can care who the mayor is or who the president is. When you're hustling, you're in that life, you can care less about none of that stuff. So here I am, 32 years old, trying to put a resume together, don't have nothing to put on there because I never worked, didn't complete
Did you have
school.
a high school degree at that time? It was still 8th grade. That was it?
Yeah. And so some older guys told me, say, hey, as long as you believe you can't get a job because of your background, your motivation to seek employment is going to be real low, and you're setting yourself up to go back hustling because you got more confidence in your hustling skills than you do in trying to find a job. You got to move forward and believe if we can do it, you can do it. So they kind of helped change my
Who's
belief.
this?
These are older guys that went through it. And so here I am in a GED class trying to learn how to do fractions and multiplications at 32. These young kids calling me pops, laughing at the questions I'm asking. I want to hit one of them in the eye, but I don't want to get put out the class. So I'm struggling trying to get through. Like, I can't do this, right? And then even getting through that, and then now I got a resume. They done concoct me a resume together, say I'm a self-starter, I'm highly motivated, all that stuff. So the biggest psychological challenge was standing at a bus stop with a shirt and a towel and a resume up under my arm, feeling like a Vic. Like I'm dressed like the guy I used to victimize, and I'm dressed like him. And thinking everybody look at me like I'm easy prey.
I've never heard a Vic?
A victim.
I know, I got it.
Right. And so that was the battle, because I want to take this towel and say, man, ain't with all this shit. I can go back to my box I've been in all my life.
The world you know.
Yeah. But them guys, through support groups, encouraged me to hang in there.
So you made one point about your father and your mother and your aunties and uncles and grandparents. You said you did nothing to make them proud except for graduate 8th grade.
Right.
Were they around when you made your change?
Yeah.
So they were there to see a different Benny.
Yeah. My mother.
What gave you the greatest, or them the greatest joy, and you the greatest joy to give them the greatest joy?
Well, one of them was when I finally got married, because I never was in a relationship with a woman too long because I was hustling. I got married, then I had a son because I didn't have no children. My son, I think I was 35 when my son was born. Not only did I get the GED, then I became a certified drug abuse counselor, then I got the associate's degree in mental health, and then the bachelor's, then the master's, and then I became the director of a program. Then I started traveling. I spent the month in Ghana over there, and then I went to Israel, right? And so I started getting these awards and recognitions. And so when my mother finally made her transition, she was so proud of me. And today my father, he's 84 years old, and he can talk with guys, and they'll say they in recovery, they came out of prison, and then he'll tell them about me, and when he mentioned my name, they get all this, oh, Benny Lee, I know Benny Lee. Because still today I go back into prison today, you know, as an independent contractor, you know, doing pre-release and stuff. And so I get a chance to see a lot of this new generation. Right, and you know, show them that there's a difference in serving time versus making time serve you. See, I served a lot of time. That's why I kept going in and out. The last time when I made the time serve me, now I done broke my cycle, and so now I can kill that ambivalence. The part of me that really want to stay out, but when I run into those barriers, those collateral consequences, and I can always go back to the other part of me that can hustle, because I still believe I can break a crap game and pick a pocket and all that stuff. But that part of me is so weak now. The strongest part of me now is get this 5-year-old grandson I got, and praying that he don't go down the path me and his father went down, that I can see him cross.
How's your son then, if I can ask?
He's in Texas now. He's 27, but he had rough coming up, involved in gangs on the east side, you know, and that even helped me too. I remember he was a sophomore, and he didn't come home.
What school? If I may ask?
Washington, over on 114th and Avenue, and you know that's a predominant Mexican area, so they think all the black guys is GDs. So he got pulled into that, and I remember him not coming home and me worried, where is he at? And it's like midnight and my wife panicking. So I go out trying to find him, and I remember tears in my eyes and praying, God, bring my son home safe tonight. I done been in gang wars, shootout with polices and all this, but I ain't never been the father of a 15-year-old son.
It's the most vulnerable, I mean, as a father of a 21, it is the most vulnerable moment for us, that you don't know how to let them have independence, and also it's also true for a father with daughters, but it's a very hard moment.
Right.
So do you play a different role in your grandson's life then?
Oh, yeah. I'm mainly the one that's taking him to school in the morning and picking him up, sitting down with homework that he get. He's an artist. He draw all this. He got 1,000 questions. We just come back from Texas last week to take him there to go through orientation to a school because my son is finna send for him. See, my son been down there now a year,
Right.
got his life together.
So he is getting it out.
Yeah. He's at some university, but it's Baylor. Yeah, they finna send him to school so he can become a vet. Yeah, so he's doing.
So he's getting his stuff together.
Yeah.
Just like his dad got his stuff together.
Yep.
I'm still kind of taken by this moment. And look, there's a whole new world. I don't know this world. And you try to put people in understanding and appreciating what you went through. You saying you're in this solitary confinement, that's what changes you. And it makes a difference. Why do you feel some responsibility to make sure nobody walks the path you're walking alone?
Well, one, I was minding my business at one time, just being a drug counselor, raising my family. And then I don't know if you remember in '93 they had this National Gang Peace Summit.
Yeah.
I was minding my business and they coming together trying to do this Gator and all them. And
Gator?
Yeah. I'm minding my business, being a drug counselor. So, Omar, who was with the Vice Lords then, and Minister Rico and them, they called and asked me would I be a voice. I said, look, man, I done left that alone. I ain't with that no more. So it took Larry Hoover to call me from Vienna Penitentiary and say, hey, this is what they trying to do. Why don't you at least go speak? I said, okay, because Larry kind of calls me every now and then, at least back then, encouraged me to stay out, right? And so I went, and they had the summit in Kansas City. I went down there, and I said, okay, that's what really pulled me into doing community work. And so as a result, a lot of people would call me saying they're on their way home or they just come home, could I help them? So I called a meeting in 2009, and about 47 formerly incarcerated and convicted people showed. 12 of them were women. So I confronted them. I said, look, you know, we're the most passive group in this country. We complain about what we can't do, but you got people like Congressman Davis fighting on our behalf, State Representative LaShawn Ford, but we're not present in the fight on our own behalf, right? We need to become at least a strong voting bloc among ourselves so we can start changing policies and fighting to lift some of these restrictions off of us. So we all became deputy registrars, registering all the formerly incarcerated and convicted people we can find. And I'm telling them, go back to your community, the hood you hustle at, and register them to vote. Then somebody had a brilliant idea, let's become a non-for-profit organization. So we came up with this name, then we moved, we got our article incorporation. And it was perfect timing because the Safer Foundation had just got a grant from the MacArthur Foundation.
It's a great organization.
And so Jodina Hicks at the time, she was like, well, we got a mentoring component part of, why don't your organization be the mentoring component? I said, okay, cool. That's why I came with the concept of reentry circles, a support group, because if we're going to do mentoring, they need to be part of a support group also, because that's what helps. And so they battled with me, so I won. We ended up with the reentry circle. Instead of being mentors, let's be reentry coaches, like a life coach. So to be a reentry coach, you got to be out of prison at least 5 years, stable in your life, right? So you can coach another person through these barriers that they're going to face, that you broke through, and how to do that, right? And that's how that whole model came about, and that's what our organization is about now. How do you train a formerly incarcerated person to market themselves as a convicted felon?
And make that their job, their resume.
Right, because the box is gone, but then that second interview, they want to do a background check, and that's how a lot of people fall apart. Where do I go when they say we want to do background check? So we train them, how do you respond to that moment?
Walk me through it.
Well, what we do is first we have them to get a copy of their rap sheet because they take for granted they know their rap sheet. I know when I first seen mine, I was surprised. I used my little brother name 3 times. I forgot all about that. I used my mama maiden name. I seen some cases on there I forgot all about. So I had to study my rap sheet, right? And so part of it is studying your rap sheet, moving toward getting your record sealed because that's your end game. But in order to get your record, see, you got to stay out of prison, you got to avoid getting arrested, you got to stay drug-free, all those things, you got to accomplish some things. So giving them something to thrive for, right? And a lot of them don't know some of the incentives, like in Illinois, you know, like a fidelity bond. If you get hired, you get insured. Companies can get a tax break if they hire you. So we educate them. You got to educate the potential employer on the incentives if they hire you. You know, so we don't give them a cover letter. We give them an explanation letter, showing what they did when I was in prison, even the tax break that the company can get. So you got to educate the employer the benefit of them hiring you, right? But at the same time, how do you market yourself? You know, like one guy called me last week, just did 15 years, and he come to the organization. I'm like, well, let's talk about how you spent your time. He didn't leave there with a GED, no certificate in welding, nothing, right? And I'm like, people will hire a person that's did 15 or 20 years, but they want to see how did you spend your time.
Whether you show, yeah.
So you kind of hard to market. But we still can work with you. We ended up getting him some work in, out there in Bolingbrook in one of them little companies and stuff.
Do you think, Benny, I have this ongoing discussion with my wife. Is it about access to a program, or about or making a change in your outlook? And do people? Sometimes I think it's not more programs. It's about people knowing what's out there, right, and knowing how to access it.
That's the thing, and that's what I was telling Vance I wanted to talk with you about it, is that, like, I'm in the Austin community, right, and Austin has a high level of convicted felons in Austin, but a lot of them don't know they can vote. A lot of them don't know about a certificate of good conduct. They don't know that companies can get a tax break, so they don't have a lot of information. So I want to flood the community with literature, do some community forums, raise people awareness. This is how you can arm yourself with this information to be a better candidate for a job, to better advocate for yourself, right, to cut that down. Because I know once I started learning what I can do and what I can't do, I got comfortable, you know, to be able to interview, to be able to respond to questions, you know, because I had learned something about laws, the Constitution, right? So I was feeling empowered. But without that, I was thinking, man, who gonna hire? Like when I first became a drug counselor, they told me to go to Evanston, Illinois, because they got an entry-level drug counselor position. I ain't never been to Evanston. In my mind, I'm thinking Evanston, a rich white suburb, they're gonna lock me up soon as I get off this L. But that support network encouraged me to go up there, and they hired me. Yeah. Right? So now here I am, a counselor, and I didn't feel qualified. So every day I'm thinking about quitting, because we would sit in these staff meetings, they're using these clinical terminologies, you know, this client's work of maladaptive behavior, this has impaired social skills. I want to say something, you know, all that Mark got to do is bust that out of his game, he be straight. But you can't use slang in no professional sense. So I would leave work every day feeling inferior with the message, quit. But where can I go? Back in my box, where it's comfortable, where the hustler.
The Vice Lord box.
Yeah, that box. Right? But the older guys, the support network, they would say, hey, man, enroll in school. And that's when I enrolled in Luke College. Now it's Harold Washington College. Right. I took enough classes to sit for the state board exam and became a certified counselor. I started getting confidence. Then I noticed a lot of counselors wasn't trained on how do you work with this gang-affiliated substance abuser. So they would terminate them prematurely. When they express anger, they would discharge them afraid of what they may do because they label gang affiliated. So I started doing trainings on how do you counsel the gang affiliated substance abusers. One thing about street gangs, they work good in groups because a gang is a group. See, the gang controls your behavior. Because see, being part of a gang is certain things you can't do.
It's like any other family or any other structure.
Right. Yeah. And people had to learn that they work better in groups. Right? You can break through, they deny about it. They may not want to be in a group, but they hear another guy comment about his progress and say, I can relate to you, then that helps him open up. Because now he's in a safe place.
Sounds like you got the clinical language down tight.
Yeah.
All right, we're going to do a rapid round, okay? It's kind of an awkward transition because that was that's fascinating piece of that. And I'll talk to Vance and make sure you and I, when we're not here, can have a sit down.
Okay? All right.
Ready? Cubs or Sox?
Well, you know, I'm really not a
Benny,
sports fan.
Well, just pick one then.
Cubs.
Okay. Thick or thin pizza?
Thin.
Okay. 12-inch or 16-inch softball?
I say a 12-inch.
Okay. Sears Tower or Hancock?
Sears Tower.
That one you got pretty quick, man. All right. The Chicago Lake or Lake Michigan or the Chicago River?
Chicago River.
All right. Benny Lee. It's fascinating how you've made your life in your way. Thanks for what you do.
Thanks for having me.
Absolutely.
You've been listening to Chicago Stories with Mayor Emanuel. You can subscribe and leave a review on Apple Podcasts and tweet your guest ideas using hashtag ShyStories. Thanks for listening.